Good morning. I'm Terry Cross, a member here at the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Flint. My pleasure to be your worship associate this morning. Haven't the mornings and evenings been just perfect this time of year? We start and end the day in perfection. A little hot in between, but I am truly grateful. Today's sermon title makes me smile. Prayer is not a four-letter word. What comes first to my mind when I think of prayer is the Mother Jones quote, "Pray for the dead, fight like hell for the living." Mother Jones faced the tragedies of life, the Irish potato famine and immigration, to a new land where she lost her husband and children to yellow fever, and her home in the Great Chicago Fire. Her early career was as a teacher and dressmaker. She went on to become a tireless fighter for the working class. We have faced challenges these pandemic times with the loss of lives and life as we knew it. The country faced division and racist injustice inflicted on our Black brothers and sisters. We have great need for both prayerful reflection and action to create a more just and caring world. And I'm thankful for my UU faith that calls me to practice kindness and work for justice. If our faith is new to you, find out more at uuflint.org, visit us on Facebook, or contact one of our ministers, Reverend Lynn or Revjerry Kerr at the church office. Announcements. Nominate an agency for Second Sunday donation. Please have your ideas to Raina by the end of May. And let's celebrate our church and its people. Saturday, June 12th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. We'll have a work party, clean up and beautify the church grounds. At 12 p.m., we'll have lunch and cupcakes. Celebrate 90th anniversary of the church and 40th anniversary of the endowment. Bring your own sack lunch and chair, and cupcakes will be provided. Nominating committee present Volunteer of the Year award. And it'll be a kickoff for the endowment fund, and we hope to see you there. Deb Gustafson, member, is participating in the 37-mile challenge to fight chronic kidney disease. If you'd like to donate funds for this cause and help her meet her goal to the American Kidney Fund, see her email update or Deb's Facebook site for details. Kayak with friends. Interested in trying to kayak? I've always wanted to try. I have not. Canoeing, yes. Kayaking sounds fun. Group of folks are organizing weekly Calm Lake and River Day trips. Several have extra kayaks to share. Great way to learn a new skill. Contact Raina Bick for more details. Cards for Ron Krueger. Ron is now under hospice care at McClandish Manor, and you can send your love to Ron by card or reach him by email. rklive2eat@gmail.com. Opportunity for local activism for Black Lives Matter. Make a difference in our community. Join the members of Flint's Woodside Church on the courthouse lawn every Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. Show support for the local movement here in Flint. Today, a town hall on the Equality Act, House Resolution 5, will be held May 23rd, 4 p.m. at the United Methodist Church of Swartz Creek. A panel of pastors will review. It takes place in an outdoor pavilion. Weather permitting, bring lawn chairs, snacks, and beverages. Organizers allege it attacks the sanctity of family and demonstrates hostility to religious freedom and freedom of speech. Your presence and statement are needed on this issue to support our LGBTQ community. And now, enjoy the prelude by Jennifer Howard. The flaming chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism by which we begin our worship. Please join me in the lighting of our chalice. Excerpt from introduction of Anne Lamott's book, Hallelujah Anyway. Lamott explains that it is mercy, the promise to offer and receive relief and forgiveness, that lies at the heart of all great faith traditions and our own spiritual identity. As it has for millennia, mercy gives us a chance to, quote, soften ever so slightly, to understand one another more deeply. By embracing mercy, we give our families, our communities, and even ourselves the opportunity to see the world in a gentler, more engaging way. Mercy is the medicine, the light that shines in dark places. Let it be so. Now, please join me now in reciting our covenant. Recognizing the richness of diversity, the beauty and wonder of shared worship, and the transforming power of love and service, we gather as a sacred, intentional community to freely seek knowledge and truth, to celebrate the fullness of life, and by our actions to increase goodness and justice.
Good morning. We stop. We pause. We pay attention. We center ourselves. We free ourselves from the compulsion of projects to finish, work to be done, things to accomplish. We leave ourselves alone for a time. We journey deep down into that quiet center where no voice is heard. We live for a brief time on an island of peace. We apprehend the world from a quiet center. Here is the center of the world. In this instant, we are centered with the whirling orbs, the movements of the earth and sky. In this fragile moment of time is the culmination of all that ever has been. It is also the promise of all that shall be. Here in our grasp, in this moment, is the center of the world. Our words of meditation this morning are those of the famous transcendentalist Unitarian preacher Theodore Parker. O thou who coverest thyself with light as a garment, shine thou in us, putting to flight all the forces of darkness, of guilt, and of sin. Shine also through us to any that live in shadow, and so fill us with thy radiant spirit. Fill us with thy radiant spirit, that we may be a lamp unto a neighbor's feet, and a light unto his path. And when the day is done, may every face we have met be the brighter for our meeting, and every heart braver, and with new joy and cheer and grace and strength.
Our reading is from a book by Elizabeth Lesser. Albert Einstein wrote, "No problem can be solved from the same consciousness that created it." In his published journals, Einstein wrote about his life in Princeton, where he struggled to find a grand unifying theory of physics. "I have locked myself into quite hopeless scientific problems," he wrote. "The more so since, as an elderly man, I have estranged myself from the society here." I can just imagine Einstein perplexed and lonely, walking in the prim neighborhoods of Princeton, engaged in dialogues with himself. Perhaps hopeless about ever resolving his scientific problems, he confided in a young student. And perhaps that student suggested that the old professor visit a tarot card reader who lived somewhere down the New Jersey Turnpike, beyond the closed orbit of the university. And Einstein said, "What the hell? I could use a change of scenery." I imagine him driving out of Princeton on a blustery day and his hair blowing wildly. I can see him squinting at the directions, exiting at a little town and pulling into the driveway of a ramshackle farmhouse. Einstein wonders what he's doing out in the boondocks. What will a tarot card reader know about the laws of physics? But he feels he has nothing to lose, nowhere else to turn. His mind is cluttered with the voices of other people. He hears his mother's voice warning him to stay out of trouble, his father's voice doubting his practical ability, and his colleagues' voices questioning his judgment. And then the rest of the world telling him to just think like everybody else. But he senses that somewhere beyond the noise, he will find his soul's voice, which will lead him to unravel the mysteries of the universe. Perhaps the tarot cards will point the way. He enters the little house and spends an hour with the strange, barefooted gypsy whose head is wrapped in a sequined scarf. She spreads the cards out on her bed, studies them carefully, and tells Einstein about himself, about his parents, the Nazis, his nagging guilt about the atomic bomb. She asks him probing questions that bypass his troubled mind and soften the tightness he feels in his heart. He lets down his defenses, and once again he remembers that it is his soul that has always unlocked the most hopeless scientific problems. He feels the fresh wind of the universe stirring his creativity. Before he departs, the gypsy serves Einstein sweet tea and then reads the leaves at the bottom of his cracked white cup. And she looks him directly in the eyes, and she says, "No problem can be solved in the same consciousness that created it." Do you understand? Write that down.
Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on. This one dropped me to mud ground. This one knocked me to my knees. I should have seen it coming, but it surprised me. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on. In a state of true believers, on streets called us and them, it's gonna take some time till the world feels safe again. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on. You can rest here in the chapel or in a circle of friends, a quiet grove of trees or between two bookends. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on.
I was raised in a family that believed prayer was an essential part of daily life. Many of my relatives believed prayer brought not only comfort, but healed, saved lives, and even brought messages from the departed. From the most devout of them, phone calls ended with either, "I'll pray for you," or "Pray for me," or "Please pray for so-and-so." Since I became a Unitarian Universalist, phone calls end with, "I'll pray for you," or "Please pray for so-and-so," and you could probably just do whatever it is you do. For a long while, I wasn't even sure what UUs do. Of course, we all know there is not one single thing UUs do. I've also come to understand, though, that prayer doesn't have to be a four-letter word. Liberal theologians, pioneering psychoanalysts, and even genius scientists didn't totally discount prayer. In 1936, when a sixth grader wrote to Albert Einstein and asked him, "Do scientists pray, and what do they pray for?" Einstein took the time to write a letter back. And he said, "Scientists believe that every occurrence, including the affairs of human beings, is due to the laws of nature. Therefore, a scientist cannot be inclined to believe that the course of events can be influenced by prayer, that is, by a supernaturally manifested wish. However, we must concede that our actual knowledge of a final, ultimate spirit rests on a kind of faith. Our knowledge is imperfect. Anyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that some spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe." It probably would have been useful to have read Einstein's words before I started my chaplaincy training, which is required by most denominations when you want to become a minister. Going in, I was just too rational, too humanist to give prayer much thought. How I thought I would get away with not facing prayer head on as a chaplain is beyond me. I was working at San Francisco General Hospital in the mid-90s, and many patients were still dying from AIDS. There were new meds out at that time, but it could not help those who had been positive for many years. I got to know and sat with many who died that summer. When chaplains started there, they were given a white lab coat, a mask if you were going to be visiting someone with TB, and a tiny glass vial of holy water that the Catholic Church had given us permission to use. It was a break glass in case of an emergency kind of deal. In addition to working the AIDS unit, we were also to choose one other specialty. Mine was the emergency room. There, we encountered shootings, stabbings, car accidents, and plenty of extreme drunkenness. Sometimes I would go a whole shift without a single crisis case. And then others I would have more than I could handle. One late night, very early in my chaplaincy, a young man died in the ER rather unexpectedly, and his family arrived quickly. I was told that their Baptist pastor was unable to accompany them, and they had asked for a chaplain to pray with them. The body had been wheeled into a consultation room for privacy, and we stood in a semicircle around the gurney, and I began with the Lord's Prayer, the only Christian prayer that I knew from memory from my Catholic childhood. I then ended it with asking this for strength for the family and added in Jesus' name and an amen, I think. And we stood there for a little bit longer while the mother wept, and finally the father thanked me with a handshake, and we all silently left the room. And I felt awful. I went into the on-call room, and then I cried. I knew I had been little comfort to that poor family, and that I had betrayed my own beliefs. I suspected that they probably knew that I wasn't being genuine, and my appeal for support from a deity that truthfully I did not think existed. Albert Einstein said no problem can be solved from the same consciousness that created it. I think I might have done better that night in the ER if I had a different consciousness about prayer, one that revealed to me why my relatives bothered me with their prayer talk. Yes, a new consciousness was definitely in order, or I would just go on using Christian prayers for those that wanted them and pretending that I believed them. Now, intellectually, I knew there were numerous ways that a person could pray. I mean, we're very rational people, you use, and most who identify as one of their spiritual practices prayer, they say they experience it as being part of a, quote, all that is, or something bigger than themselves. UUs have also described prayer as a conversation with the universe. They've also said it's a connection to the mystery that some call God, or a response to a world in trouble. Many comment that prayer is more of an intimate conversation with themselves, or a mindful noticing of their fears, their dreams, and gratefulness. Now, all of that made sense to me. I also understood that whatever defined prayer in my childhood or in the lives of my relatives didn't have to confine or define me. But it wasn't going to be easy anyway, not just because of those phone calls. Peanuts compared to the stories. I grew up hearing stories all about the power of prayer. They stuck with you. There was cousin Alan. He died years before I was born, but I can picture him nonetheless. Kids in my family that aren't even born yet will probably hear about Alan. He would have been my second cousin, and he'd been complaining to his mom that his legs hurt. Everyone assumed it was growing pains, including his mom, Aunt Mary. By the time he got to the doctor, cancer had spread throughout his whole 11-year-old body. He was dying, in tremendous pain, so he was put in the hospital so that they could keep him somewhat sedated and get the pain under control. He was going to die, so Aunt Mary began calling all the relatives that she could think of and asked them to pray for Alan. If they could come to the hospital, better yet, she asked them to come and pray around his bed. But here's the thing. Aunt Mary, she didn't ask for Alan to be cured. She knew it was too late for that. She only prayed that Alan would be relieved of his pain. After days of quiet prayer around Alan's bed and people that were related all over the country praying at home, Aunt Mary said aloud, "Lord, please Just give me a sign that Alan won't suffer anymore. And if you do, I promise I will only weep cries of joy that he joins you in heaven, never of sorrow. Now, according to people who were there, within minutes of his mother's plea, Alan opened his eyes. He sat up and said, "I'm going home." Laid back down and died. Now, I always rolled my eyes at this story, and I kind of do a little still, but there's a part of me that gets goosebumps. You hear it so many times from people who are actually there, and they tell it with such drama, just like I told you. I mean, what can I say? So you wonder, did Alan hear his relatives around the bed and found the strength to speak so that his mother would be comforted? Was Alan a religious boy and felt moved to say what he did because of that belief? Or did the power of all those people praying help Alan to move on and help his relatives accept his death? There's millions of people and families who have been in similar situations. And of course, it's human nature for people to want to believe that prayer works. I mean, wouldn't it be great to think that there's someone or something out there that hears us and cares? I mean, what if we knew an intervention was possible when life goes askew? Now, some people will tell you they do know that, and that's why they pray to God. Now, maybe you default to that, when you hear that word prayer, to that famous photo entitled Grace of that elderly man that sits at the table with bread in front of him. It was taken in 1918 in Minnesota. Maybe that's your idea of prayer. Or maybe you only think of the categories of prayer as asking for something. And it always involves a deity. And I'll even bet a few of you, myself included, have seen a sign or two outside of a church for prayer requests. And you might even become, shall we say, a bit irreverent. For too long, though, I think we've put prayer into too narrow of a prayer box. Even Christian theologians like Reinhold Niebuhr saw more. He wrote that prayer does not change things, prayer changes people, and people change things. Prayer is not hearing voices, prayer is acquiring a voice. After beating myself up after that emergency room fiasco, I came to realize that all I needed to do was acquire my voice. One UU minister said that prayer isn't about leading the universe toward a desired outcome, but it's about being led to our greater consciousness and compassion. Like Einstein, I knew that I needed to change my attitudes to find an answer on how to pray as a chaplain. My goal was to be authentic and still be helpful to patients, but not compromise my integrity. So I ended up carrying what I thought of as my new holy book in my white hospital coat. It's a little gem, I think, and it's called Earth Prayers, and perhaps you've heard of it or have it. It's a small little book. And I found that no matter who lay in the hospital bed, I could find something in it that spoke to them. I also learned to pray with people authentically by drawing from a place of love and meaning. It went beyond asking a deity for a miracle. And you know where I started? With our gray hymnals. And I decided to start with one of my favorite songs. My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentations. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing? Thus began a prayer life for me that did not leave me feeling I was betraying my UU values. And I found plenty of good reasons to have a new consciousness about prayer. I discovered that Carl Jung thought prayer changed a person's life by giving it meaning, by allowing us to feel part of something that was bigger than our ego or the other. Coincidentally, shortly before his death, Jung wrote that one can not even deny the efficacy of all types of prayer, or their practices would have been extinguished long ago. He thought prayer works in some way. And that leads me to another reason why I work so hard to find a way to pray as a chaplain instead of just letting it go. It's because a growing number of scientists and doctors will tell you that prayer is good medicine. Of course, my family would have told you that. Because you guessed it, there's more than one story. I was close to my cousin Tommy from Minneapolis because, you see, all of my cousins would come and spend part of their summer with us on our turkey farm. And Tommy was like a sibling to me. Now, the accident happened back in Minneapolis. He was hit by a car while he was riding his bicycle when he was in grade school. And it put him in a coma with a severe head injury and a lot of broken bones. And the doctors pretty much told his family to expect the worst. Well, you can imagine what happened. A prayer phone tree was started by my aunt, and everyone was contacted to begin praying for Tommy's recovery. Across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Texas, and Arizona, anyone related to Tommy, and probably a fair number of Catholics who didn't know Tommy, were praying for Tommy and lighting candles in churches and kneeling for Tommy. Now, I was too young to really remember it all completely, but I heard the story enough times that I almost believe I was standing there when it happened. So after several days of nonstop prayers, my grandmother called my aunt, Tommy's mother, and told her that she saw a vision of Tommy waking up. That was it. Everyone knew Tommy would be okay. Grandma was almost never wrong. She knew when people were going to die, be born, or get in an accident. The next morning, my grandmother went to the hospital and walked into Tommy's room and sat down next to his bed. She took his hand, Tommy opened his eyes and he said, "Hi, Grandma Pete." Now, Tommy wasn't perfect after that. He had a long recovery and he had some lifelong issues. But he lived. Most of my family that prayed all those days will tell you that God intervened. Now, I don't believe that. But something happened. Physician Larry Dossey, who has written several books that stress the importance of prayer and spirituality and physical healing, would say that prayer most definitely helped Tommy. But he would also say it wasn't God's hand. He believes that Jung's the other or universal consciousness connects all of us. And that's how prayer helps heal or cure disease. Dossey is clear, though, that no one should completely abandon traditional medicine for just prayer. But Dossey is not an outlier. Academic and scientific communities are more and more accepting the benefits of prayer and spirituality. As an example, from 1996 to 2016, the number of medical schools offering courses to their students in spirituality and healing went from a total of 5 medical schools to 75% of all medical schools. Research shows that religious involvement can help people prevent and recover from illness and live longer. Although this is not scientific, have you ever noticed how young our older folks are in UU churches? They look younger, they act younger. That might be a marketing angle, I think. In one 28-year study, mortality for those who frequently attended a religious service was nearly 25% lower than for those who attended less frequently. People who go to church at least once a week, they have stronger immune systems than those who don't. And even though church attendance has been going down steadily in recent years, the percentage of people who say they pray at least once a day has gone up in the last 3 decades. According to the National Science Foundation, 3 out of 4 Americans say they pray at least once a week. Dr. Dossey describes the way he treats his patients with prayer in this way, and I really like this. He says, "Prayer is so allied with love, I'm just extending compassion. I've never met anyone who objected to a little love." So whether praying in a hospital or before you go to bed at night, I believe equating prayer and love is really the most accurate way to describe prayer. As one UU chaplain and author wrote, "Love is the only legitimate intention of prayer." She offered a story as an example. She was in New York after 9/11, and they had declared a National Day of Prayer a few days later. And Reverend Billy Graham was giving an address in New York. And this is what he said: "Many of those people who died this week are in heaven right now, and they wouldn't want to come back because it's so glorious and wonderful." Well, the chaplain was working with firefighters and police officers as a chaplain. And one of the New York cops said to her later, and very angrily, "Who isn't in heaven?" Because Billy Graham had said most. He said the Jewish cop, the Muslim cop, the gay cop. So it occurred to me that if I believe my prayers reach the universe and change the universe, then I better make them in love, or I do a disservice to myself and to everyone and everything else in the universe. And since discovering that, I think that's made all the difference. You know, it would be fun to think that Einstein solved his physics dilemma by seeking a psychic. But perhaps it was much more ordinary, like bumping into a colleague who offered to sit on the Princeton green and hash it out with him. Or maybe Einstein went home and walked in his garden and held a daffodil in his hand, and the answer somehow became clear. Whatever Einstein did, he found a way to change his consciousness enough that physics was never the same. You know, it may even have happened on a quiet bench near a wall of ivy in a kind of contemplation that we might even call prayer. May it be so.
Holy is the dish and drain, the soap and sink, the cup and plate, and warm wool socks and cold white tile, shower heads and good dry towels, and frying eggs sound like psalms, with a bit of salt measured in my palm. It's all a part of a sacrament, as holy as a day is spent. Holy is the busy street, and cars that boom with passion speed, the checkout girl counting change, the hands that shook my hands today. Hymns of geese fly overhead and spread their wings like their parents did. Blessed be the dog that runs in her sleep to catch that wild and elusive thing. Holy is a familiar room, a quiet moment in the afternoon, and folding sheets like folding hands to pray as only laundry can. I'm letting go of all I fear, like autumn leaves of the earth and air. For the summer came and the summer went, as holy as a day is spent. Holy is the place I stand to give whatever small good I can. The empty page, the open book, redemption everywhere I look. Unknowingly we slow our pace in the shade of unexpected grace, with grateful smiles and sad lament, as holy as the day is spent, and morning light sings providence, as holy as a day is spent.
quote from Daily Ohm, an online site featuring universal approach to holistic living for mind, body, and spirit. When we choose to be grateful, we notice that every breath is a miracle, each smile becomes a gift. We begin to understand that difficulties are also invaluable lessons. The sun is always shining on us when we're grateful, even if it's hidden behind the clouds on a rainy day. A simple sandwich becomes a feast, a trinket transformed into a treasure. Living in a state of gratitude allows us to spread our abundance because there's energy that we emanate from our beings. The universe wants to shower us with blessings. The more we appreciate life, the more life appreciates and bestows on us more goodness. And that's the way I roll. It seems especially poignant in these pandemic times as we cautiously creep back into life outside our cocoon. Being told by my librarian, the cook at the Beirut grocery that they missed me touched my heart. I missed them too. I joined a group of other vaccinated UUs last evening at the Flint Institute of Music for an outdoor concert. Seemed like heaven on earth to see faces I haven't seen in a year's time. I'm thankful for UUCF practicing safety protocols. I'm thankful for the contact we've had via Zoom and at outdoor work parties and get-togethers. I find great comfort, inspiration, and friendship in this place. I can't wait till we're together again, celebrating in worship and song in the sanctuary. Until then, your continuing support is greatly needed and appreciated. Donations can be mailed to the church office and can also be made online to our website. Thank you.
If prayer can help us live consciously, honorably, and compassionately, I need prayer. As long as prayer helps me be more loving, I need prayer. As long as prayer serves a potent means of sharing my love with others, I need prayer.
Now let us extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold together in our hearts until we are together again.